Hello and welcome to Design Boss Dialogue, the podcast where bold and ambitious women in interior design come for real conversations to transform and take their businesses to new heights. I am your host, Lisa Marie Elkhadraoui, interior designer and business mentor, here to share my experiences and insights into running an interior design business, as well as empowering you to build the confident, profitable design business you've been dreaming of and truly deserve. In this space, we blend creativity with strategy to help you craft your success and thrive in the world of design. Every episode is packed with unfiltered, no BS conversations, daily inspiration, and actionable business tips to turn your passion into a thriving, cash-rich business. Together, we're redefining what it means to succeed in the interior design industry, one intentional, game-changing decision at a time. So get ready to step up, elevate, and create the design empire you've always envisioned. Welcome back as we open door 17 today for another episode of the Advent Calendar Christmas podcast. And I am joined by a dear friend of mine and powerhouse, Samantha Hearne. She is a qualified coach and mentor who specialises in supporting women to reach their next level income with maximum profit possible. Samantha uses her scale framework to support women in building multi, 6 and 7 figure businesses, and her activation triangle formula to ensure you work with ready to buy clients that align with you and our business ethos at every stage. And today we are talking about what it truly means to grow and scale your business financially and how that can happen smoothly and sustainably. Sam, it is so lovely to have you back for season 2 of the Christmas Advent Calendar podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I cannot wait to dive into today's conversation because obviously I've been in your world for many, many years now, and obviously run both the businesses through your beautiful, fabulous coaching and mentoring. And we've talked about this topic a lot over the various years. And today's value and tip for the women is talking about what it means to grow and scale your business financially and how that can happen smoothly and sustainably. So let's talk about what does that actually involve?
I think the first thing I would say is everyone will have a slightly different slant and perspective on this when it comes to online business, and that's okay. So everything that I share is from my own personal experience, but also the results that my clients have experienced as well. So this is really built on case studies and years of my own business development and my clients. But I would say there's 2 fundamental differences. There's growing a business and there's scaling a business. They're not the same thing. And where people get confused about growing and scaling is you have to understand which season of that you're in. If you're growing your business, there's going to be a lot more around your output. Growing your brand, your visibility, your community, your network, growing your lead gen, growing your authority. There's a lot more in creating that momentum, the growth. When it comes to scaling, that's when you are looking at refinements, tweaks, smaller intricacies, bigger visionary thinking, next steps, 5-year plans, and doing both of those smoothly and sustainably. The first thing I would say is you have to be really mindful of which stage you and your business are in so that you can do this smoothly and sustainably. Because if you start scaling too quickly, when we should be growing, you could end up in a few situations: a bottleneck, not enough clients, overworking, being underpaid, not having boundaries. And if you try and grow when you should be scaling, then you will find that you end up with maybe some resentment, boredom, lack of creativity, clients going elsewhere because they feel like they've outgrown you. So it works on both levels. The smoothness and the sustainability of it primarily does come down to understanding what your business needs and where your business is and who do you need to be and become in order for your business to get to that next stage in the most effective way.
Okay, so if we break that down, so For the listeners that might be thinking, okay, I have just started my business or I'm in the early years, how can we define what period growth looks like in terms of years and what does scale look like? Just so that women can start to kind of get their head round going into 2026. Okay, that could be my season. This is where I'm at and this is how long I maybe should stay in it, or what should I be thinking about as well? So starting with growth.
Really good question. The thing that I would say if you're listening is this cannot be defined by time, because people use their time so differently. So if you're listening thinking, okay, I'm going to spend 6 months, you decide how efficiently you operate. So if you're listening to this and you're a really fast mover, you take action, you get things done, you have that gumption about you, your 3 months could be someone else's 3 years. So I would say that the growth period of a business, stereotypically, of course, there's differences, but usually would be between £0 to £200,000, because quite a lot of that phase is you're meeting new people, you're changing your branding, you're getting photos done, you're getting a website, you're looking at your services, you're deciding that you do love this, you don't love this, you're realizing buyers like this, they don't like that. And at the same time, you're making money and everything you're doing is being built on progress. So there's quite a lot of progress that happens, but there's also a lot of changes. Once you get to between 200 and 400, let's say, you are then thinking, hang on, do I like how I'm working now? Does this work best for me? Is this my capacity? Do I want to be doing these days? And then that's where the tweaks and the intricacies come in. So if I was to define it, I'd probably say that monetary milestones could be a better way for you to think about what does your business need.
I like that, because it's not, you can't really apply a cookie cutter approach to it. And I know with so many women that you meet and I meet, women could be 5 years in, but they've hit ceilings of maybe 75,000 or 50,000. And they want to take the business to the next stage. But actually, we've got to backtrack and go through some growth and some foundations to then look at what those next levels are.
In my experience, if someone is at that point and they've reached that stagnancy or that stalemate, it's because they've tried to scale too quickly. And therefore, the foundations and the fundamentals have fallen by the wayside. They're now focusing on increasing prices, one-to-many, doing these bigger things. And then they've forgotten some of those fundamentals like visibility, adding value, showing up and making an impact, collaborations, networking, emails, marketing, your message, podcasts, whatever those things are. They tend to then get forgotten because now you're serving clients, which is great. But then when those clients have finished their experiences with you, if they don't renew, you've got no pipeline, you've got no lead gen, and you also haven't been building your authority. So one of the biggest things that I see when you get to that 50, 75 stalemate is that we try and think too far ahead too quickly and forget that these foundational things still need to happen. For example, I still use my Instagram how I did when I first started my account in 2016. I show up, I add value as often as possible. I send emails every single week. The fundamentals in my business will not change because I know that they have the biggest impact. That's the biggest ingredient for the business to be able to keep doing what it needs to do. So yeah, the growth phase at every part of your business is so powerful.
So talking about the growth phase still with the fundamentals of the foundations, what would you consider would be solid foundations in a business looking at that growth stage, if you could pinpoint them?
If you have an online service-based business, you cannot get away from the fact that your people are your business. If you don't have buyers, you don't have a business, you have a fan club. You are not running a business if you don't have buyers. If you run a service-based business, there's not a product that they can take away. They are buying into you, your brand, and your business. So the biggest priority for any service-based business is to always be building, nurturing and converting your community. If that is not happening, everything else is going to stop working. The machine and the cogs will stop turning. You need people commenting and engaging. You need people sharing your content. You need people inquiring. You need people to say yes. You need people to say no. You need people to refer you. You need people to say not right now. You need people to say, can I renew? You need people, full stop. You need people. So that's a really easy one for me. If you really want to be strengthening your business, you need to be strengthening your communities.
I love that. I think there's so much power in community, and you could be bringing out the best product or have the best strategy. And if you have an empty nest, as I call it, or you might have 1,000 or 2,000 followers, but you don't know who they are. You have a community that is really not a community. It's a collection of people that have no interest really in your business. And then you don't really have foundations to grow on that effectively, do you?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So with regards to, we've kind of looked at community and visibility. Would there be any other foundations that you would say to a woman or a listener that they need to be really looking at in 2026 to apply to their business, or get them thinking about, okay, I need to really look at this for my business to grow?
Something that's really important is you understand there's a difference between what someone would like and what someone will pay for.
Okay.
So if you are really wanting to develop your business, you need to develop your business acumen at the same time. You need to really be doing your due diligence and your market research, competitor analysis around, if you're at a point where you're thinking about what to launch next or what would be the perfect service, find other people or brands that do similar things to you and start learning from their audience. So even if you don't comment and engage, just read through the comments on that person's posts, read through the comments of what people are buying, look at what's getting a lot of engagement, look at what's drawing people in, because that's your collective buyer space. And then the second thing I would say to that is also become really mindful of how often you are connecting and asking your community where they're at and what they're struggling with and what they need. And this doesn't have to be a really in-depth audit. It can simply be a poll where you say, hey, just let me know where you are right now. And that's all you do. You don't do anything else. It doesn't always have to have a complex spiderweb around it. But when you work out what your people are willing to pay for, and when you work out what gets your people talking to you, you can align that with what you want to be selling and how you want your business to work, because you know it's based on the principle of buying, not the principles of being liked. You know, the other thing I would say is please do not use ChatGPT to create all of your language, because it is not creating unique, industry-specific, niche, your language activation, right? So, for example, things like from chaos to calm, that's just one example, or from messy to mindful. It's really important that what you're building is built on the essence of what gets people talking and engaging. Do some market research on that, and also ask your audience, what is it that you need? What is it that you're struggling with? Use their language. I feel like I've gone on a tangent there, but there would be some.
I love that. I love that, like mirroring their language back at them as well, which can be so powerful. And this is something that we use in discovery calls with interior designers, that when you're sitting listening to your clients about their feeling of their home, and you're mirroring their language back at them to make them feel seen and heard and understood, and how then you can support it. It's such a powerful tool, and it works in any service-based business as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Forbes did research in 2024, which said that the 3 biggest contributors to people buying is being seen, heard and understood. So massive publications are doing research on what gets people to buy in the modern AI technological advancements of the world. So there is no denying that some of these human touches and human aspects of language, conversation, engagement, messaging will always talk to the buyer when they feel like that language aligns with them. If you're using language that feels too generic, they become desensitized to it, and it doesn't feel personal to them.
Yeah. So I think the big one going into 2026 then is growing your business is looking at, you know, how you're aligning with your community and connecting with your community, your messaging, your visibility, those really strong foundations, and building a brand that is true to you and that you've got a strong community behind it, that you know your community as well, because there's no point in having a lovely business and no community there. It just simply won't work. So with regards to scaling then, let's go to the other side. So scaling the business, obviously, like you said, is very different to growing. What does scaling look like then? Key fundamentals in scaling.
Scaling is a bit like rock climbing. So, and you could call it like scaling the wall. It's never as fast and it's a lot more methodical. You know, if you don't land on a ring, you're going to fall off the wall. Scaling is a lot more like that. You need to plan your route before you go up the wall. You need to make sure that you have the right safety. You know your direction. There is a lot more forward thinking and forward mapping that comes with scaling, but there's a lot more deliberate actions taken. You don't try as many new things at once. You might have one or two, and that becomes something that you repeat 3 or 4 times before you decide if it's good or not. There's a lot more data. There's a lot more evaluation, and scaling becomes a lot more around leveraging your time as much as it does increasing your income. It becomes more around how is this sustainable around my life at the same time as making more? Because when you're growing, you tend to end up from working 0 hours to working however many hours you want. And therefore that is equated to more income. When you're scaling, that starts to shift slightly. It's less about the number of hours you work. It becomes more about your expertise. It becomes more about your knowledge. It becomes more about execution and application. But it also becomes a lot more about your business model and how these rocks form so that you can climb the wall. How are they built on one another? Where are their foundational offers? How do your services complement one another? It becomes a lot more of a dance, I would say, when you're scaling your business. Whereas when you're growing your business, it's more of a march. You just keep going. You know, it's very much more gung-ho. Let's just keep moving at force. And some things will work and some won't. When you scale, there's a lot more time spent. You feel like you're in circles a bit more because you have to review things and reflect things. Things might feel a bit slower, but actually it's much more purposeful. So that's how I would explain the difference.
Okay, fantastic. I love that. And you touched upon a word there earlier on in the podcast, which was bottleneck. And I think a lot of people experience this in business. They get to a certain point and then all of a sudden this can creep up really, really fast, where you have bottleneck situations within your business. How do you approach avoiding bottlenecking to create like smooth transitions through the seasons of your business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say some of you listening need to get to the bottleneck point to realize that something needs to change.
Okay.
And some of you might need to have that. You might need to have that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm actually full. What do I do now? Because until that point, you don't really take full ownership of your calendar and your containers. So for some of you listening, you might actually need that to really be put back into perspective of this can't be how it continues. And, oh, now I can't sell for another 3 months because I'm full. You know, you need to, sometimes some listeners will need to see this in action because it's really easy listening to the theory, but until you're in it, this is what I always say to people when they come to me, you know, I want to make $250,000, I want to have 50K launch. They say that from a theoretical point of view, but when they realize the calendar will get busier, the type of clients and the client needs will change, the energy you have to give people, the containers you have to hold, the way you have less time on your business because you're working on other people's, the practicality of it is very different to the desire. So for some of you listening, you will need to see the practical impact of your decisions in order for you to recognize that those two things are linked and your decisions do impact your business. For others, the key thing, a bottleneck essentially is where things get stuck. If we just really, you know, call a spade, things have got a bit stuck. Yeah. So if you want to avoid that, so it could be stuck in a way of my offer can't grow anymore because I feel like I've talked it to death and it's like, I just feel like it needs a breather. It could be there's too many people in it and I can't get to them. It could be the wrong type of people. It could be, I really want to bring out another program, but this one is exactly the same. And now I'm just going to have two of the same thing. There's lots of ways you can find these kind of bottleneck stuck moments coming into your business. But essentially it's where nothing more can come in, but essentially nothing's going out. It's kind of like we're all just stuck in the bottle, let's say. And how do we widen that again so that things can pour out and pour in? So the thing I would say is really important if you want to try and avoid those moments is remember you're climbing the wall. If you want to know where you're going to put your hand next, you need to have that with your business as well. Like, if, for example, above my computer where we're recording, I have a whiteboard and it already says 2026. And it has everyone that's in each different experience, their month they start, the month they finish. So visually, even though I have this all on spreadsheets, every single day when I come to work, I can see, oh, I've got one space for this. Oh, this person's due to finish here. Oh, I can see it in action every single day. So you need to find your own practical anchors that allow you to always stay really present, as well as seeing and thinking ahead. This is the current, but this is what's coming. So I either need to launch, promote, sell, change an offer, reduce something, get rid of something, get someone to renew in order for things to change. That would be my very simple but effective task that I think that everyone can do, to have a visual anchor to really see what's coming.
And in terms of looking at going into understanding some people needing to experience that bottleneck, can you pinpoint a time in your business across the many years that you've been doing this where you have experienced a bottleneck, maybe in the very early years, and what you did to kind of pivot?
So, yeah, I have seen so many changes in this space. And I would say for me, one of my biggest strengths is innovation. Whatever the situation is, I'll always find a solution. Nothing is ever, and this is just a top tip. I have conversations with women all the time and they feel like something's failed, not worked, it's not working, they're stuck, they're in this kind of energy. Find a solution. There is always a solution. So that's just like a side note. But I remember when we got to March 2020 and the talk of the pandemic was beginning. Yeah. And to put it into true perspective of how much I had no idea really what was coming, on the 18th of March, I flew to LA. Wow. On the 19th of March, all our airports got shut down. And on the 19th evening, I was sat in LAX airport after just having a blow dry for a photo shoot that I then didn't have. So I flew to LA for a blow dry. I then waited at the airport and got on the night flight of the 19th. And I said to the air stewardess, we had to go first class. There were the only two seats available. I went with my friend. And I said, what would happen if we went on this plane? She said, you'd be in America for a long time. No other flight left after that day. So wow. pre the 20th, that's how little we knew what was happening. And I know that you will all have your stories, but for me, I was like, it will be fine. And I had people messaging me on my stories, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. 12 hours later, I'm back in the airport crying, like, this is really bad. But I remember at that point, that puts into perspective what I'm about to say. I also then had no idea what was going to happen in my business. I was like, this is really, really bad. Like, I don't know what people are going to do. I don't know if people will I don't know what's going to happen. You had all of my clients are women and they had children. I wasn't a mum yet. And I was like, what are they going to do? Their kids will be at home. People can't work. There was just so many things going on in my head that I thought, okay, Sam, you have got to act quickly. So I said to Luke, my husband, I was like, right, it's go time. That's when things are bad. That's what I always think. I'm like, right, we've got to do something. So I put out an offer for 8 weeks at 888. Now that was wild. I was charging way above that, but I was like, just get people in, collapse everything, go against all the business rules. No one's raising prices. I'm just going to get the people in, secure my cash flow for the next 2 months and see where we are. And I sold 10 of those in a day. So they all went, which is great. I've made just under 10 grand, but then I was absolutely slammed because I now had 8 one-to-ones on top of 2 masterminds, a membership and a full one-to-one rota. I was so busy. And by the time I got to June, we were back in our next lockdown, and I said to Luke, I can't do that again. I'm going to have to think of something else. So I did. I innovated again. But that was a massive, not necessarily it was a bottleneck on my time. I was like, yes, I've made the cash and that's great. And you know what? Would I do it again? Yeah. Knowing what I know now, if I had to do that again to support my business and keep the pipeline and all of that, I would do it again. I can't lie, I would. But I did then the second time think this was the bottleneck, my time. I had no more time. So then I thought, how do I leverage this? How do I make any more? What does that look like? The next time I did, I pivoted that slightly and I created a 9-month offer, which didn't exist at the time because I had a 6-month offer. I mean, it was 7.5 plus VAT. And I sold those. So it's similar thing. The outcome, it still did what it needed. But two things I would say is it was just the messy. I didn't speak to anyone about it and say, should I do this? I just was like, we'll just do something. Just do something.
We're doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. So I did the messy middle. I took action and innovated, but I then learned from it and then adapted. But yeah, that was probably the biggest bottleneck because my time was just, and like I said, I didn't have a child then, but I was working way more than I wanted to. And it was just, we're at home. Luke was still going to work, actually. He wasn't really affected in terms of staying at home, but I was then at home back to back 5 days a week. And all my friends were off. None of my teachers were at school. I was working harder than ever. So yeah, that very long-winded, but that was probably the biggest bottleneck that I can remember with real poignance.
Do you know, it's almost listening to that and obviously looking at my experiences of kind of bottlenecks of where I've been in business as well. I think sometimes, like you say, you really have to sit in them and experience them to push you into a next level growth as well. And that they can almost up level your experience of business. And one could even argue, if you're not experiencing them at some point in your growth journey in your business, one could argue, you know, are you maybe being not pushed enough or something?
You have to make mistakes. I just think this is what I mean. Like, you can't, it's all well and good me saying to someone, I don't think that's a good idea. It's like being a parent. They're going to still do the thing. So I'll be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm like, brilliant. You do it. It's your business. And then they come back and go, Sam, that wasn't a good idea. So you do. Like, you have to. And being uncomfortable is not a bad thing. But we have impression. We have this impression that if things feel hard or feel uncomfortable, then it's wrong. It's not. No, and that's a big part of scaling. When you're scaling, things are different. At the beginning, when you're growing, sometimes things are wrong and you just don't do them again. When you're scaling, it a lot of the time feels more uncomfortable than wrong because you're just taking slight detours. There's smaller, intricate, little, what about this? The nuance is different. So you feel a lot more uncomfortable a lot more frequently when you're scaling than when you're growing, because when you're growing, you're like, no, okay, I'll do that. All right, we'll do that. Okay, we'll do it. And it's all building. Once you're scaling, you're like, right, we need to be a bit more methodical or we're just coming off this wall. So
we need to be strategic with this plan.
Sure. But I think I would advocate for that so much, Lisa. You can't be afraid to get wrong or make mistakes or end up in a situation like that where you're like, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
You can't create what you do want unless you've seen what you don't, sometimes, not all the time. And some of us need that feeling of this is absolutely not what I want. Yeah. But you wouldn't know that until you're in it, you know? So having that definitive clarity sometimes comes from being in the situation. And that's okay.
And experiencing it as well.
Yeah. I also think there's a myth, just very on my TED Talk, I think there's a real myth around once you start multi-6, 250,000, 500,000, hedging towards 7 figures, there's a myth that one, everything is easy, one is figured out, and also it's different. It's not. It's exactly the same if you want to make 100,000 as you want to make 10,000. The only change is your mindset and the development around it. But the principle of making money in a service-based business stays the same. You need to talk to your people. You need to be able to connect. You need to understand your audience. It's you that changes. It's you that decides how do I want this to work for me? What do I want this next 90-day landscape to be? How do I want to work? What do I want to charge? Who do I want to work with? It's you that starts to change. But so much of that inner confidence and real knowing also comes from when you've got it wrong. And you're like, no, I'm not working with you because you say you can pay in full and start tomorrow, because you're a red flag. But at the beginning, of course, you work with that person. Do you know what I mean? So you have to have your own blueprint of F-ups before you then really scale and say, do you know what, as much as that would be a good idea, I just can't do that again. It's like reference points in time. So yeah,
I love that. So before we wrap up today's podcast, what would your final tip or value that you would want to leave the listener and the followers with heading into 2026?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good one.
Such a wide question.
I know, I love it. After my 2025, I would say, since starting my business in 2016, 2025 has been my biggest year of growth. In nearly a decade since starting. The year I started, it was just like I had the Midas touch. Everything was just on my side, because you're at the beginning, you don't have a benchmark. So it was like I was getting asked to speak at shows, I was going to conventions, I was making sales, I had this best-selling podcast, I had a best-selling book. Like, it was just like, I felt like, it's just amazing. That I haven't had that level of like magic until 2025, when everything changed again. I made some really big decisions. I got really brave with myself. So my top tip with that in mind, coming off the back of 2025, would be really, really honest with yourself about what you need this year to be. And I say that because in 2022, I was going through IVF and pregnancy. I did IVF in March, so I was pregnant for the whole of 2022. I had my daughter at the very end. So 2023, I had a really small baby. 2024, I just started to feel human again. So that period of time, I'd actively chose to keep the business where it was, which was very successful. I downplay that slightly if you're listening, so it was doing very, very well, and I was now working 1 day a week, but that was my goal. I wanted 2.5 years to just sustain the success that I'd built, and I'd worked so hard for it. Like, you know what, Lisa, as we all have, but when I really look back at that period of time, I felt like I had worked so hard to get to that point. And I was like, I just want to live in this for a minute. I just want to get what I've done and work enough to sustain it. And if you're in that period, I would say unapologetically own the period you're in and do it justice. Whereas in 2025, I started the year and I was like, nah, this is my year. I ran the London Marathon. I bought my dream forever home. I've nearly tripled my annual take home each year. So it's been a massive year, but it's because that was my intention. So don't listen to this and feel, my biggest piece of advice is, please do not listen thinking you should be here, should be there, want to do this, want to do that, run before you can walk, take on 20 million jobs, overwork yourself in January. Please just listen to this and say, what is my commitment to my 2026? Is it sustaining what I've built and really looking at my business and saying, does this work? Is it taking a step back and letting your team, if you've now got one, in an infrastructure, and delegate and take more time off? Is it hustle? I do think there's time for that. Is it, I need to actually stop making excuses, get my heels stuck in and dig in? Yeah. Is it scaling? Is it go time? That would be my biggest thing, because until you really unapologetically choose what you want the year to be for you, it will just run away. We know that it will just run away. Yeah. Life happens, time goes by, and you don't end up happy with your choice. I was so happy with my choice. I don't regret anything for 23, 24. I'm so proud that I did that, but it's because I chose that. I'm also really proud of my 2025, but I chose that. And I know you're massive for that. Your choices and your intentions are massive. So my biggest piece of business advice is choose what you want your business to become for you and for your business in 2026.
I love that. And you always get a choice. You always get a choice. Sam, thank you so much. Today's podcast has been so fun and so value packed. And I know that all of our lovely listeners and followers will be taking all of that on board for 2026. And you can find how to be in Sam's world in our show notes. You can follow her on Instagram. She's got her website. We will see you again tomorrow for another action-packed podcast. Sam, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Design Boss Dialogue. If you love what you heard, then please share the podcast with your friends and any women that could do with a dose of empowerment just from me. I would love to hear your thoughts around today's podcast with your key takeaways and wins, because your feedback means everything to me. Also, don't forget to leave a review as well as hit that follow button so you never miss out on any inspiring conversations with me or any other trailblazing women I have on. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes, and remember, unleashing your inner design power and unlocking your true potential is only a click away. See you next time.